Hello, everyone. Welcome to our third panel for Everybody Hacks. Welcome. Oh my gosh, I already said that. Okay, we can cut this out of the recording. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our third panel hosted by Everybody Hacks, which is the hackathon hosted by Geodat. This is our very first year running. We are essentially a hackathon that's trying to create an interdisciplinary space for students of all majors to get together and work on collaborative projects. The hackathon is scheduled for Saturday, May 14th, but during the month of April, we have this panel series with 4 panels, and this is the third one. So why don't we get started? I'll pass it off to to Leo.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Leo. I'm one of the co-hosts for this panel. I'm part of the logistics team as well as the social science co-chair. I'm joined by Zulkifli.
Well, my name is Zulkifli. I am the major chair team lead, and I am happy to be here. I am also going to be one of the hosts for our third interdisciplinary panel series today. Alrighty, and we're going to go ahead and pass it on to Leo, and he will introduce our first speaker.
All right, so our first speaker is our very own Arghya Kannadaguli. Arghya is currently a water rights mapper at Washington State Department of Ecology. She's also a senior at UW, where she researches environmental health disparity and necropolitics. And okay, give it up for Arghya.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks for the introduction, you guys. I guess I'll talk a little bit about my field and what I do. So as you know, my name is Arghya Kannadaguli. I use she, her pronouns. I've lived in the greater Seattle area for most of my life, and I've been studying at UW for my undergrad. Outside of school and stuff, some of my hobbies are dancing and rollerblading and things like that. So I'm in my last year at UW, and I'm a geography data science major. If you are not familiar with geography, it's a lot more than just states and capitals, which is kind of what we're taught in grade school about what geography is. But essentially, geography is the why of where. So why do certain people live where they do? Why do they work where they do? Why do certain systems and organizations have the spatial relationships that they do? So it's a pretty complicated, well, I wouldn't say necessarily complicated, but it's a very fascinating field. And I really love studying and researching it. So I'm really glad to be able to talk to you guys about geography and what it is today. To talk a little bit about my work. So I work for the Department of Ecology for Washington State. I do water right mapping. So to explain a little bit about water rights are one of the most publicly requested documents in the state of Washington. Essentially, a water right is it's a kind of property right. So for example, if you live in an area where you want to use the natural water resources where you live. So for example, if there's a stream near your property, or if you would like to set up a well to access water from a reservoir that's under you, you need a water right for that. Otherwise, if everyone were to just freely use whatever water was around them, it would be difficult to manage water resources. And so that's kind of what water rights are about. So what I do is I take legal documents of water rights and I map them on the state of Washington's Geographic Water Information System. Which is called GWIS, GWIS. So a little bit about the history of water rights in the state of Washington. So in, I believe, 1917 is when Ecology's water rights program began, and that was before Ecology began even. And so since then, the organization has been kind of trying to document people's water rights across the state of Washington in order to manage the state's water resources. So my work kind of helps with that. And in the present day, a lot of what the Water Resources Program does is to manage compliance issues and create new permits for people that want to use natural water resources and things like that. So that's kind of the information about my field of work. To talk a little bit about my research, so I have been interested in the environment for pretty much as long as I can remember. I think growing up in Washington, where there's a lot of consciousness about the environment and about trying to be green, it was kind of easy to get interested and invested kind of at a young age. And that's kind of what led me here. In college, I started to explore the more public health side of environment. I'm specifically interested in the spatial relationships between environmental quality and public health. So environmental health is a field that kind of focuses on like, where are there, it's a subfield of environmental justice that focuses on like, where are there environmental pollution sources located, and who are the people that are most exposed to it, and is it, where are the inequalities, and what can we do to fix it? So right now, one of the things that I'm focusing on in my research is environmental health disparities right here in Seattle. So a lot of you might be familiar with kind of like South Seattle, Beacon Hill Industrial District area. That whole area is located near multiple large highways, as well as the Duwamish Waterway. And if you are not familiar with the Duwamish Waterway, it's if you're driving south on or from U District, if you're driving south on either I-5 or the 99, you'll kind of come across this area where, well, you're crossing over some water and there's a lot of like shipment containers and cranes and things like that. When you're crossing that body of water, that canal kind of area, that is a Duwamish Waterway. And that's one of the most industrial regions. I would say it is the most industrial region of Seattle, which is why it's called the Industrial District. But what's interesting is a lot of the communities that live and work near the Duwamish Waterway are largely communities of color. So those are the communities being most exposed to the industrial pollution that's created there, and that the traffic pollution as well that's nearby. So it's an issue that definitely needs more research, and there are already a lot of activist groups trying to make a change. And so I'm hoping that my research can kind of contribute to that. So far, there has been a lot of research into why and how the exposure to industrial and traffic pollution in the area can cause health issues in the respiratory and cardiovascular systems. But according to some research, exposure to industrial pollutants like volatile organic compounds, or specifically benzene and benzene-related compounds, can cause issues with our metabolic systems. One specific study that found that exposure to volatile organic compounds is linked to insulin resistance, and insulin resistance, developing that can lead to diabetes mellitus, which is a pretty severe and dangerous condition to have. So I think there needs to be more research about how environmental health also involves more than just like respiratory and cardiovascular issues. It also specifically involves metabolic issues. So that's something that I'm passionate about raising awareness about. And so yeah, that kind of describes my research a little bit. Thanks, Elizabeth. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to use my skills to make a positive difference in the world by kind of raising awareness about environmental health issues that I see in my local community. And that's my goal for now. When I grow up, all the way, hopefully I'll be able to, pursue a career where I can make a larger difference. But for now, I'm going to be doing my best to raise awareness and get involved in advocacy and activism so that, to contribute to larger already existing efforts to make a difference. Some advice for students who may be following a similar career path, who are interested in the environment or public health or in the intersections between those two fields, or students who are interested in geography, is just kind of recognize your passions and the specific areas of the field that you're interested in, and then just go for it. There are so many wonderful resources at the University of Washington in the libraries. Faculty are always really, really willing and excited to help you. So if you have any questions, email a faculty member, ask them if they might want to mentor you to do some research or things like that. Or if you're really interested in research and are kind of new to it, I would recommend visiting, for example, the Undergraduate Research Symposium or the Geography Research Symposium, which I believe are on May 20th and June 3rd. But trying to get involved in research and those kinds of communities on campus to explore your interests and take things from there. So yeah, that's my part. Thank you.
Great. Now let's give a round of applause for Arghya. Thank you so much for speaking. Now we're on to our second speaker of today, Nanditha Shivakumar. Nanditha is a research coordinator at the University of Washington Medical Center. She works on recruiting and enrolling patients, as well as working on various clinical trials pertaining to transplant patients. All right, let's give it up for, Nanditha.
Thank you for having me here. I'm very excited. I was introduced. So my name is Nanditha. I use she, her pronouns. And a little bit about me. I grew up in Singapore. I ended up in St. Mary's in 2015. So I did my last 2 years of high school here, and I did my 4 years of undergrad at UW. I got my degree in biochemistry, and I got a minor in chemistry and global health, and I graduated spring 2021. So currently I am a clinical research coordinator at UW Medical Center, and I work for an infectious disease transplant physician. So a little bit about how I ended up in this career. I knew that I was always interested in biology and chemistry, and knew that I always wanted to do something in health. So I was pre-health when I did start off college. But then through my coursework and a lot of the research experiences I had, I realized that while I did like learning about various biological processes that happen in the human body, I liked looking at medicine and looking at health through a community perspective. And so a lot of my research experience has been doing clinical research. For example, I was working for Dr. Helen Chu's lab, who she does the Husky testing on campus. So I was working there, and also was working at the Seattle flu study. So doing a lot of her trials made me realize that I really like talking to patients, and I did like that face-to-face contact. And so that's how I ended up in this job. So a little bit about what I do. So clinical research coordinator at UW, my main job is to enroll patients, to recruit, to see which patients are eligible for our research studies. So for example, right now we are doing a couple with a lot of various infectious diseases. So we have one with the Moderna vaccine, where we're administering the Moderna vaccine to transplant patients who transplant patients are immunocompromised. So we're just basically comparing their immunogenicity levels, or just seeing how their immune system reacts to the COVID vaccine and comparing that to healthy participants. So that's one of the studies that we're doing. Another one is we are looking to see which flu vaccine regimen is most effective for transplant patients in preventing flu. So for example, a lot of patients who are, or a lot of people who are over 60 get a high dose of the flu vaccine, but for transplant patients, because they are extremely immunocompromised and they're very susceptible to getting a lot of diseases. A lot of people don't know or haven't done, there's not a lot of research that's been done on whether or on which dose of the vaccine is helpful to them. And so that's the kind of research that we've been doing at my lab. And so a lot of the work just includes looking through a lot of their hospital charts, seeing if they are a good fit for the study, working very closely with the physicians here, and coming up with the best research protocol. And a lot of it is also just data entry. And the thing that I really find fulfilling about this job is definitely how patient-centered it is. So we are able to talk to patients, help them in any way that we can, see if they are interested in being a part of the study, because a lot of clinical research studies are basically trying to better the standard of life for a lot of patients. And so a lot of the job is just speaking to patients and making sure that they're comfortable in participating. So yeah, and any advice I would, as someone who was interested in medicine and health, but realized that that wasn't the path I wanted to take, I would say doing any or participating in any research at all will help you figure out what you want to gain from the field that you're interested in. So for me, I realized because I was a biochemistry major, I did a lot of biochemistry research, did a lot of bench work research, and realized that wasn't something even though I liked it, it just wasn't something as fulfilling. And so I did a lot of clinical research, and I realized that that was something I liked. So definitely figuring out all the various opportunities you have on campus. You can talk to your professors, look up their lab website and see if that's something you're interested in. You speak to your friends and see if they are involved in any research and seeing how you can get in on that. Also, just like Arghya said, the undergraduate research symposium is a great space for people to see the research that is being done on campus and see if that's something you're interested in. So yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, do you want to go, Zakika?
Oh, no, you're good. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Nanditha, for giving us the opportunity to view into the lens of your everyday career and advising us to explore the various opportunities and resources around campus and our connections. Next, we will have introducing Sydney Vahl. Sydney is currently a toddler teacher at the Child Learning and Career Center in the U District, and also serves as the staff liaison to the center's board. In addition to serving the children in the care, their work also involves advocating for families, connecting them to resources, and celebrating with them. Please give it up for Sydney Vahl.
Hi. Oh, there we go. Thank you so much for having me here. Excuse my setting. I'm actually on my lunch break, so soon I'm going to go back to the kiddos. But again, yeah, I'm Sydney. And sorry, I lost my train of thought. I've been working with kids for about 4 years now. I've been at the Child Learning and Care Center in the U District, which is although it's in a church, it's a non-denominational preschool. And I've been really enjoying it. I work mostly with 1 to 2 year olds, so very little kids. And a lot of what my work is working with that age group is working with social emotional skills. So encouraging kids to express their feelings, work through what do those emotions feel like in their body, how they relate to their peers, and working on a lot of like gross motor, so big movements. A lot of the kids that start with us are just learning how to walk, so we do a lot of exercises during the day to kind of get their mobility up, and lots of art. And I actually got started in education pretty early. Growing up, my mom ran a daycare out of our home. And so I was always around little kids. And when I got to college, I took this amazing course called Race, Ethnicity, and Education. And it was the first education course I had ever took. I, at that point, was not an education major. And that class focused a lot on how education in our country is not fair to many, many people, and how we can break down structures and start introducing conversations about race and about culture very, very early. And so something that I've been really excited about in my room is introducing lots of books and materials that feature mostly kids and families of all like races, genders, sexual orientations, and talking about how families and people in general are all different. And I see that in my class where they start asking questions pretty early, and it's really rewarding to be in a position where you can continue those conversations in the classroom as well as with families, which is the second big part of my job. As an educator, especially an early educator, you are not just there for the kids, you're there for the whole family. So the kind of behind the scenes part of my job is a lot of email communication. We used to do in-person conferences, but with pandemics, or the pandemic, we've been doing a lot of Zoom communication with families to just check in with where they're at, how they're doing, and if they need anything. And if it's something like they're experiencing food insecurity or they're struggling with something within their family, we can often locate resources for them, or we can try and bridge the gap in the classroom to make sure that that child and family is getting what they need. I think that one of the biggest pieces of advice that I could offer to somebody that is looking to go into education is to be very patient. Education is not, it's a field that has a lot of, sorry, I'm looking for the right word. A lot of frustrating moments. You get things like there's a national teacher shortage at the moment, so short staffing. But you want to make sure that you're connected with your director if you're working in a childcare center, or you're connected with just your peers for support, and really trying to take care of your own mental health. When I was in my degree, a lot of what they talked about was I believe it's 1 in 5 teachers do not teach for more than 3 years. And a lot of that is due to teachers not getting support from their centers or schools, or from teachers just suffering from burnout. So never be afraid to ask for what you need if you're going to be in education. And luckily, I've had pretty good experiences where it's if I've told my director, hey, I need this, I'm able to get it, or I'm able to work towards a plan for it. And many, many people in education understand what it's like. They've either been a teacher or they know the issues surrounding teaching right now, and they're willing to help. It's just about asking for it. So yeah, that's my little part. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sydney, for showing your toddlers and their families care and going above and beyond as an educator in your field. I actually found it very motivating to hear your story, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to come out and share your story with us. But yeah, if I can, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Luciano de la Iglesia. Luciano is the head of engineering at Opensug, a startup in the maritime software space, which aims to reduce costs, complexity, and environmental impact of marine freight. Please give it up for Luciano.
Thanks for having me. It's been great listening to the other speakers. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Seattle. I attended UW where I studied computer science. Graduated from there in 2020 and then did my master's there in computer science as well. Finished that last year, 2021. And while I was at UW, I did a few internships at Microsoft in software engineering and data science. And after I finished my master's, I joined Microsoft as a full-time data scientist, and I'm still working there. What my job there is basically, so it's within Dynamics 365, which is a product that helps other companies just manage their customers and do sales and marketing and all that stuff. So I specifically work on these models that help companies learn more about their customers using their existing customer data. So I do a lot of like experimentation, testing out and developing our new models, and just seeing how they're doing on various different customer data. But the other thing that I work on is the startup called Opensug. I co-founded this while I was at UW with a friend of mine who was interning at a tug and barge operator, a local one called Maritime. And what he discovered is a lot of the time there's a lot of unutilized resources in this field, because what will happen is, for example, Foss would have to send up a tugboat that was towing a barge with cargo on it. They would send that up to Alaska with some cargo, and then they wouldn't know anybody that wanted to send stuff back to Seattle, but they had to bring those assets back, so they would just come back empty. And a trip like that, I mean, the fuel alone is like tens of thousands of dollars to run that empty back, plus crewing. It's very expensive. Obviously, you're burning fuel. You're not doing anything useful. So we thought, what if you could market that extra capacity, post it on this marketplace, and then customers can book that. And so that's what Opensug is. It's a digital marketplace for tug and barge services. The other part of it is tugboat services, where a large cargo ship comes into port. You need a tugboat to bring that in, or multiple tugboats in some cases. So you can book that all online, and we automate a lot of the booking. Right now it's pretty complicated. You need there's tons of emails going back and forth and phone calls. So it's a mess, and there's no transparency of information. Like, nobody outside of the industry has a way of seeing how much capacity there is on this route. And because of that, trucking is a lot more popular today in the United States, which is not the case in Europe, for example. So part of our goal is actually to move a lot of the cargo off of the roads and onto these barges for short journeys, either in the inland river systems like the Mississippi or up and down the West Coast. Like, what happens is a lot of goods come in from China to Long Beach and the port of Long Beach, and then those are trucked up to Seattle. And you could take a lot of those trucks off of I-5. You could ship it up with 90% fewer carbon emissions, lower cost, less traffic deaths, all the bad things that come with traffic, pollution. So it's just kind of like a win-win-win. And we just make the system that like basically enables people to book that in a more simple way. So yeah, what I do there as the head of engineering, basically I'm in charge of building out the product, which is a website. And it's a lot of kind of like high level thinking about like, how do we want to structure our database? What technologies do we want to use? What do we want to prioritize building out? Things like this. And yeah, so I guess some advice I have for anyone that's trying to do like entrepreneurial type things are to always develop as little as possible before you start showing it to people. So like you should just create like a minimal prototype you can and show it to customers and see if people actually want it before you invest like money and like more resources into building it out further. Because for example, what we found is initially we just filled out this marketplace, but turns out nobody wanted it because we went to the tugboat operators and they were like, there's no customers on this platform. We went to the customers and they were like, there's no tugboat operators on this platform. So we had to pivot a bit and like create a service that we could sell just to the tugboat operators, which is this booking platform. And then from there, we can build out the marketplace. But in general, with any like new idea, you need to make sure you're validating at early stages, and you don't need to invest too much in like development before you've done that. So yeah, that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Luciano, for sharing your entrepreneurial story of how you developed your startup, Opensug, and your journey to become the young professional that you are today. I actually was quite interested that you had to find a middle ground for both the freight people and the customers. So I actually applaud you for that and am supporting you all the way. I also want to say thank you to all the speakers today for enlightening us with all the different experiences and advice. And hopefully we can at least take the insight that you all have shared today with us and use that to inspire us in our own story, whether it be academically or career-wise. Now I will go ahead and open up the Q&A where the viewers can send in their questions that they may have for our panelists. I will open up the chat, so feel free to send in your messages, but I will go ahead and start off the Q&A. The first question I have for all the speakers are there any common misconceptions about your field? If there are, what are they?
I can chime in for that. One of the common misconceptions that I get a lot is every time I I say I'm a teacher, I get, oh, so you just get to play with kids all day. And it's a yes and no. Yes, I get to spend my whole day with kids, but a lot of what I'm doing is documenting their development. I am, like I said before, talking with parents. I am working alongside my coworkers to try and make sure that our classroom environment is up to par and is engaging. And there's also a lot of licensing requirements, which unfortunately, most education programs do not go into a lot of that because they are state specific. So a lot of being a teacher in Washington State is looking up what are called the WACs, which are basically all the rules about what you can and cannot do in the classroom, and clarifying those not only for your peers and yourself, but for parents, because some of them do apply there. So not just playing with kids, but that is one of the best parts of the job.
Gotcha.
I can take that question next as well. The biggest misconception I've heard about the field of geography is that it's just related to knowing the specific boundaries and like where are the states, where are the capitals of like different countries. I think part of that is because so many of us, our only exposure to geography growing up is in grade school. So we're taught some of the most basic levels of geography, like where are the states and capitals, because that is part of geography. But it's important to remember that that's not the whole thing. I think one thing that I would compare that to is like in grade school, for example, we learned that 5 + 5 is 10 in math, but that's not the entirety of math. There's a lot more to it as well. And the same thing applies for geography. So I think I talked a little bit about what geography is already, but I would say that is one of the misconceptions that I often come across. And I just want to say like it's a lot more interesting than that. Geography and data science both are such interdisciplinary fields. You could have, for example, economic geographies, cultural geographies, racial geographies, environmental health geographies, like what I'm studying. It's really about applying the lens of spatiality to any kind of problem that you're looking at, and understanding why do certain issues exist where they do. And I would also argue that adding a geographic lens to any issue makes it more, for example, if you're studying, say, a specific type of cancer in the United States, and you know that X amount of people have it and it comes from these causes, doing a geographic analysis of that helps you kind of locate where the community is being impacted and where should we focus our efforts to mitigate or solve the problem. So yeah, there's a lot more to geography than just states and capitals. That's what I'd like to say.
Gotcha. So then geography is like a very diverse field, and for Sydney, hers is more related towards a lot more. There's a lot more to go behind the scenes. So I really appreciate Arghya and Sydney for sharing the common misconceptions within your career fields. We actually had a question in the chat by Sophia for Nanditha, asking, do you have any advice for someone finishing with undergrad looking to get into the clinical research field? You mentioned undergrad research, but are there any other pathways to get started?
This is a great question. And I just want to start off by saying that for a lot of jobs, and then including clinical research, you really don't, even while they look for prior research experience or just any involvement in the science-ish field, I honestly just think having the main skills necessary for the job, for example, having good organizational skills, having good communication skills, people talk, like it's just anything to do, any skills that are transferable, I really think is all you need, because a lot you just learn on the job. So I think we have a lot of, one of my coworkers was first a landlord and now they are in clinical research. So you really can, you don't need prior research experience, especially in college, to get into clinical research. While it is helpful in terms of you have connections, you have different people that you can talk to, I would say being involved in anything such as volunteering, being involved in any experience where, you know, you're in the hospital, whether you're working as a receptionist or, you know, are not doing anything related to research, just like, but are in the healthcare setting, I think it's super helpful to get into clinical research. Obviously, if you have any STEM background, that's also very helpful, but you don't always need clinical research experience in undergrad to get into this position. So really just trying to, there are a lot of different places to apply as well. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Thank you for the insight. Thank you. Sophia says thank you, Nanditha, for the advice and insight. The next question I have for all of the speakers are, have you encountered any obstacles in your career path and how did you overcome them? A lot of careers usually have hardships and things that come about there, and everyone's experiences are different. So I would really like to hear how each of you tackled your own obstacles and how you guys would like to overcome them, and share your stories on how you would overcome them for the viewers.
I can take that question. Okay, so I would say that one of the obstacles I faced was not specifically as a geographer, but just as a person, is burnout while in college and things like that. And it's something that is very correlated with like mental health issues and things like that. Like burnout can lead to mental health issues, and I don't know, your mental health, if it's not doing so great, then that can lead to burnout too. And I would say that being kind to yourself, I know this sounds so basic and you all have heard it so many times before, but whatever your career is, whatever you're wanting to do with your life, know that like making one small mistake or doing poorly in one class here, or even, I don't know, just little mistakes, like don't let them get you down. Don't let them and it's a lot easier to say than to do, but make sure that, you're not putting too much on your plate to kind of, like, we all want to succeed, but I think a lot of times by putting too much on our plates, we like spread ourselves a little bit thin, and rather than being able to do like a couple different things really well and get like a good experience from them, we put ourselves in a situation where we're kind of struggling to manage a lot of different things. So I would say that, yeah, just be kind to yourself. I don't know if that was a little bit vague, but that's that's something that I would respond to that question.
I also have a quick point to add. If you are in a position where you are unsure about what you're doing, what career path to kind of go into, or what you're interested in, honestly, I think gaining any and all experience is very valuable. And also just looking to see the pros and cons of every experience. So for example, for me, a big thing all throughout college that I had to figure out, and I'm still figuring out, is like what I really want to do. As much as I like my job, I don't know if it's something that I'll do in the next 5 years or past that. And so I think just like using every opportunity that you have, using the connections that you have, talking to your coworkers, talking to your boss, just really being transparent about what you want in your experience and what you're looking to get out of it. And then, if you really enjoy it, that's a great first step. If you don't enjoy it, then, looking to see like what good experience you can get from that, and sort of like using that to plan out your next steps is also very important, because, once you graduate college, it's a really intense transitionary period where you might not get a job right after you graduate, or it might take you a while to figure out what you're interested in doing or what you want to do. So I just certainly I would like to say just use any and all experience you can get, because there's always more pros when whatever that you do. So I think being patient and just taking into consideration that whatever job that you're getting into, that there's a lot of good there. You might enjoy it, you might not enjoy it, but like trying to be aware of that. I don't know if that was helpful, but
That was most definitely helpful. Thank you so much, Nanditha. If anyone else would like to share in and add on to that, I would definitely love to hear your guys' stories.
In education, a common struggle that I see in my coworkers and in myself is forgetting that families are the experts on their children, and really listening to what the family has to say. And I know that in the past few years, many educators have really struggled to make connections with parents, because at least in my school, I know we haven't, this week is the first week that parents have been allowed into the school in, actually, yeah, not 2 years, which has made it difficult to kind of read emotions when parents are talking about different issues with their kids, but always remembering that you can't see inside the home, you can't see inside someone's own personal experience, unless you ask, unless you put them in that position of power and you say, I'm wanting to learn from you so that I can provide the best possible care. Especially with issues like a few years ago, I had a child who needed to be referred to services, and the family was very against that. And I didn't understand why they would be against it until later, finding out that they weren't in a position where they felt like they could access them, and they were afraid to ask. And so if I had stepped back a little bit and stopped kind of pushing for what I thought was right, I might have been able to make a more genuine connection there and help them figure out an option. So I think taking a step back, letting everyone in the situation speak for themselves, and remembering that you are just a part of this family's life. You're only with that kid for a year, maybe 2 years. So giving yourself that space and being patient is definitely something I'd recommend.
A follow-up question for Sydney is, was the transition from having the parents not being there and now having them there, was that transition more difficult on your side, being a toddler teacher, or do you think it varies between like the different education like grade levels?
Yeah, definitely. I do feel like being a toddler teacher, most of my kiddos can't really tell you what they did that morning or what happened at home. They might give you some cryptic one-word explanations for things. But it was really difficult because what we used to do is parents could come into the classroom, they could hang out, they could observe. So it's definitely felt it's felt really good to get back to getting to talk with families, even if it's just for a little bit at pick up and drop off. I do feel like with older age groups, you can kind of get more, like if you're working with 5-year-olds, for example, if something happened at home, or we have a couple of kiddos whose parents will give them kind of a rundown of what to say to the teachers when they come into the school, and they'll let you know what they had for breakfast, how they slept that night. Whereas with a 1-year-old, you're not really going to be able to get that much information. So it has been an interesting transition for sure.
That's very adorable. That's actually really cute to hear. And I actually had a question for Arghya, also by Sophia. They said, you mentioned diabetes mellitus being linked to volatile organic compounds commonly found in industrial district. Are there any other predominant diseases linked geographically to the Seattle area?
Hey, that's a great question, Sophia. Lots of great questions for me today, so thank you. I would say that I don't know that I'm the best person to answer that question. My specific experience in research and things like that is related to diabetes mellitus, and even related to that illness, like I know that there is a correlation between exposure to VOCs and exposure and in industrial pollution and I'm forgetting the word, prevalence of diabetes mellitus. However, I don't know that there has been much research specifically related to diabetes in the industrial district area. That's kind of my prediction, that there might be an issue, especially because, and just to kind of go off on a little tangent here, especially because the link between VOC exposure and diabetes prevalence seems to be higher in Asians. And there are a lot of Asian communities around industrial district Beacon Hill area. So I was kind of curious to see whether there will also be a higher diabetes prevalence there, but I don't know that there is. And as to other illnesses that might be predominant or geographically linked to the to Seattle area, I don't know. But I think I would estimate that, issues that are commonly related to industrial pollution and traffic pollution exposure, those would be things to look for and to research more into, like, for example, asthma or other respiratory or cardiovascular illnesses. Those would definitely be something to look into. I know there is on Beacon Hill, there is a organization called, I think it's called El Centro de la Raza, that is doing some research and activism into, thanks for coming, Sid. Research and activism into specifically respiratory and cardiovascular issues. And so that is definitely something that, to answer your question more concisely, Zofia, I believe there is a geographic prevalence of lung and heart issues in Seattle associated with the specific regions where there are higher concentrations of traffic and industrial pollution. But again, I'm no expert, so that's just my estimate.
Perfect. And then for our last question of the day, what is the most impactful advice that you have received while on your career journey?
I think for me, it's just been the growth mindset. I think people talk about it a lot these days, but with anything that's like hard or like worth doing, like such as your career, um, it's gonna there's gonna be times where you just feel like stupid or like you don't belong or like it's just like why am I not doing better, like stuff like that. So um it's important to be able to see that like you're not like a finished product. You can become better at what you're doing, and the only way to do that is like working hard on it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add to what Luciano had said about the growth mindset?
Um, I mean, I touched on this before, but I just think knowing the value in every experience for me personally has been it's been like very important just because just throughout my college career, I was very confused about what I wanted to do. And so just taking on any experience, whether it is working in a research lab or any extracurriculars that I did, just trying to find the value in it, realize if I liked it, if I didn't like it, and then that sort of helped me get one step closer to what I wanted to do or what I like to do. So, if you're ever feeling stuck, feel like, you're in a position where you don't know what you're doing or you don't like what you're doing, there's always value in something and it'll help you get one step closer to your goal. So.
I really like that. Thank you. Arghya, would you like to say anything or add anything to what Nanditha and Luciano has said?
Definitely. I think both of you both shared some really great points. And just to kind of add on about what Nandi said about exploring different fields and things like that, I think in college and in your early career, you'll often hear like the advice like to network. And people will say it literally 3 times, I'm telling you. But one thing to kind of take away from that, I think when I was a little bit earlier on in my college career, I was kind of hesitant to network with people because it felt, I don't know if some of you have felt this too, but just the idea of networking for the sake of career growth felt a little bit superficial. But I would say take away, to kind of interpret networking in a different way, like to kind of look at the people in your life who you can draw inspiration from, whether it's a professor, a coworker, a peer, and create your network as kind of like a network of inspiration. Like who are the people whose work and whose professions, whose careers, whose passions you're also interested in? Like talk to them and get inspired. And if you truly love something and are looking for opportunities to pursue that in your life, the people around you will see it. And there will be opportunities that will open up, I would say naturally. Like if you, for example, my research advisor who I've been, doing this environmental health project with recently sent me like a job posting about environmental health GIS. And I thought that was that's a really great opportunity. So if you're passionate about something, if you really invest in like good working relationships with the people that inspire you, eventually that will, I don't know, lead you further towards your passion.
Alrighty, thank you all so much for your insight and inspiration. I just would like to say thank you to all the speakers, Nanditha, Arghya, Luciano, and Sydney, for sharing your journeys as a young professional in this field. It really does show that everyone has a different story and unique story, and with having a growth mindset and seeking out networks, you're able to achieve your goals. And if you keep going at it, you will be able to achieve anything you set your mind to. A little bit of announcements. I do want to announce that we will have our next panel series, the fourth one, on April 29th. So we would all love to have you guys there, hosted by Everybody Hacks again. And yes, thank you all so much for being here, and we hope to have you guys again in the next panel series. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.